Good morning, gardeners and homesteaders. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. It's another very windy day in coastal North Carolina. Right now it is 72 degrees. Feels like it's about 60 because of the wind. And I want to tell you today, I want to kind of explain to you how I got 100% harvest off of one of my most difficult crops this year. So I'm going to go through all the steps that I took. Yes, the bed in question is this bed. This is the bed in which we had all of our broccoli. So we had 28 heads of broccoli in here and we harvested 28 heads of broccoli. Now it's all peppers. We're still waiting for 2 peppers to harden off. So in a couple days I'll put 2 here. And I think I'm gonna try and squeeze 1 more in right here. But otherwise you can see it's all gone. And here's some of the scraps left over. Stuff of them I fed to the chickens. And if you've been watching the videos for an amount of time, you know I've been talking a lot about broccoli, and you're probably gonna be glad to hear this is the last time that I'm gonna talk about broccoli for a little while, because it's gone. But you've seen it in the garden, and you've seen me talk about it, and to your recollection, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but nothing was bolting out of control in any of the past videos. So we took a certain amount of steps. Usually in the spring, we have a really hard time growing broccoli. It bolts, it just gets to that time of year. I mean, last week we were in the highs of the 50s, and then next week we're gonna be high in the 85. And it's gonna probably stay about like that for the remainder of the spring. So you can see that it would be really quick for it to bolt, and we wanted to take steps against that. We wanted to, 1, monocrop this bed so that we could just simply keep an eye out on it. And 2, we wanted to make some adjustments to basically everything to get it to grow to its maximum potential. And I do think I could have done better, but I'm really happy with the result. And then also, there's a couple things that did need to change, but we'll go through that as well. Been having a terrible windstorm and rain yesterday, and it's just trying to take out my brand new freshly planted garden. Very first thing I did, and we have to go back 365 days, well, really probably 390 days, to last year, when I took the advice of my local extension service and I planted the broccoli right around mid-February like was suggested. And much to my surprise, I got a lot of bolting going on. So I had to go revamp that. And you know that on this channel, I've talked a lot about, and I'm going to continue to talk about planting earlier, because it is my general belief that us as gardeners don't really understand what plants can take and how cold they can get. But what we did this year is we planted a month earlier than what was recommended, and it worked out absolutely perfect. So that was step 1. The first things first, we watched the weather, we paid attention to it, and that's why I just give you a weather update, because it's important for you to know what's going on, and I want you to pay attention to it in your garden, especially if you're trying to crack the code, if so to speak. So we knew it was getting a little bit warmer. We know that our climate does a certain thing in the spring where it tends to be warmer. Hence, you know, now today I am a little bit confused. I've got a tank top underneath and whatever. It's frustrating, but welcome to North Carolina weather. So we planted a month earlier, but that wasn't the only thing we did. That was like step 1. And I took a multi-step approach to this. So we planted a month earlier, which means we started our seeds a month earlier as well. And I was really worried about that. I was really nervous that planting early would not really, or starting the seeds early would leave me with overgrown seedlings. But much to my surprise, it wasn't bad. Now I planted them and it was still cold outside. Don't get me wrong. We had plenty of cold weather. To be exact, we had 2 months of, you know, freezing temperatures in and out, stuff like that to deal with. So we were prepared. I'm going to call back to a previous video to cover when we needed to. Now, truth moment, we never actually set up our low tunnel on this bed, but we were prepared to either build a new low tunnel if needed or add a new low tunnel if needed, if we felt like the temperatures got to a certain point. So I waited until a warm week, I planted, and then I just knew that it was going to be, you know, decent weather for a couple days. And at that point on, I always had in the back of my mind, if it's going to get too cold, we are going to plant, we're going to cover this bed, and we're going to build or move a low tunnel. This is just a tool that I have in my toolbox, right? It's just something that I have available to me. And if I need to, boom, it's done. And then right there, we know we can go even colder than we did, but the mid-January mark for me worked out pretty well. And now the other thing that we did, and we did this heavily, and I've been talking about this recently, and I'm going to continue to talk about it, is we fertilized real heavy with the broccoli. So this was the other aspect of it that we really wanted to kind of hone in. We just did an episode on the Backyard Gardens podcast about it, where we were talking about fertilizing, and I've been doing it on here, and there's a reason for it, because it really did help. And I was watching it work day by day. I was literally watching it grow bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. And we didn't even have a lot of pest pressure. And I do relate that directly to having nice, strong plants. So you may or may not have seen some of my videos where I'm planting, and if not, I'll show you. Basically what I do, since I run a drip system, I have 4 rows of drip line in here. Every single time I plant, no matter what, I dig up the whole drip system. This is another reason why I monocrop. I dig up the whole drip system and relay the lines, and when I do, luckily I haven't planted, you can see we put fertilizer down. So this is a well-balanced fertilizer, and then we also have blood meal that we put in for the broccoli. So I typically put blood meal in for just about everything at planting, sometimes heavier than not, but for broccoli I put it in pretty heavy. And that's pure nitrogen. It grows leaves. Well, more leaves means more roots means more fruits. So we put that in. And then, because it was wintertime, and because we used organic fertilizer, I realized that it's going to take a certain amount of time for that fertilizer to start to break down in the soil and then become reactive to the plant. So we knew that going into it. Now, if you really want to see how this works, you're going to have to go watch the fertilizing video, the spacing video I did, crop rotation. You have to watch it. This is like a culmination of all of these techniques put together. But when we put the broccoli in, we let it ride for about a month, and then we fertilized again. And so we did the same fertilizer. So one reason why I wanted to make this video today, even in the wind, is because you can see right now in these rows, there's plenty of space to put in, you know, to get in there, to work, all that stuff. So we would come through and we would side dress each row with the same amount of fertilizer we did the first time. So I generally use 4 handfuls of fertilizer per row. And then we would come back and we would just sprinkle in the blood meal right next to each row, and you can take the hoe and scratch it in. So that was about a month after planting. And then the plants start to grow. And what does that cause? If you go back to one of the other videos, you can see where I squatted down, and I can take you over to another garden bed. If we come over here to this bed, like you can see here, you can't get into these rows to fertilize at all. That's just not going to happen. Well, that leads us to the next stage of fertilizing, and that was our drip system, where we injected directly into it. So I gotta step in the greenhouse, the wind's just brutal. So we put the fish fertilizer, is basically what it is, in the drip system, and then we went back and we just started fertilizing that way. So we did our initial fertilizer, we did our next fertilizing, and then once the plant started to grow and we could no longer physically get in there, then we rely on that. And at first it was like once a month, and then it started getting to like every other week. So once the first month. So this would be around February 15th we did it, and then from March 15th until now, we did it 2 to 3 more times. I think we did it 3 more times. And the first time you could see it get more green, all that, and then boom, all the heads would just grow each day. I literally was watching them grow. It was amazing. And so we'd use that to our advantage. And that food's really important. And I know you're probably thinking like, hey, that's a lot of fertilizer. You're over fertilizing your bed. Well, let's look at that too. So if you think about it, broccoli uses a lot of nitrogen, and nitrogen is also water soluble. So that works out perfectly because it gets watered out, it gets used up, all that good stuff. And then you had so many plants in here that the roots were just using up as much as possible. I mean, we had it really packed. So now what we do is, because we have peppers in here, they use the different parts of the fertilizer. So you have the N, the P, the K. And so what we did is we went ahead and we fertilized now, and then now we're just gonna watch the plants. Kind of a game, right? But what do we know about the peppers versus the broccoli? We know these peppers can be in the ground here for April, May, June, July, August, September, almost 6 months. They can stay in the ground, almost 7 months technically. They can stay in all the way up until our first frost. So there's plenty of time for them to use all of that. Now the only one they're not going to use is the P, the phosphorus. So that always stays in your soil. That's why I use a lower phosphorus soil or fertilizer. So we know that that's going to work. So what we do is we do it now. We'll probably do the same thing, and then we're just going to watch it. And what we'll probably do is then we'll switch over like we did with the other one and just start drip fertilizing through our drip, because that is a liquid. It gets used up immediately and it doesn't store in the soil as long. So this is a multi-pronged approach to it. But once you understand how each plant feeds and what it uses, it's going to make it easier for you. The other thing we're going to do, and you can see here, like this one even started producing some side shoots, which don't even comment. I don't eat side shoots. I don't care about them. Is we wanted to make sure that we were timing our harvest just right. It's really important that you do that. So if we come over here to these plants, you can see that we're timing the harvest just right. We're daily coming out and we're checking on them, and we're looking at it and saying, hey, what are we gonna cut? What are we gonna take? You know, like these cabbages, for instance. Every single day I come out here and just do that. And that's telling me how solid is the head, how big is it getting, am I getting close? And you just don't want to be greedy. You know, go ahead, take that cabbage, take that broccoli, take that tomato. When it's ready, it's ready. You don't have to get the biggest damn one you could possibly get. Just get what you can get off of it and move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? Because we knew we had a time frame for this bed over here. We knew we had to get everything out of it so we could get our peppers. And so we started timing it. We started watching it. And that was my discreet way of every time I did a video. So we're gonna do a broccoli check. That's me checking the heads of broccoli every day. And it's either the last video or the video before this where I went through and I said, look, it's starting to bolt. It's time to harvest it. So I came out and I started cutting broccoli, and ended up just taking the whole thing. All whatever was left is like half of them were left. And it was a lot, but that's part of it. And that's the part where I messed up. So the part that I'm not happy with is the fact that I have 15 heads of broccoli in my refrigerator right now. Now, that being said, there's a multi-pronged approach to this. And you can preserve it. We could blanch it and freeze it if we wanted to. The way I look at it is I'm just gonna eat as much broccoli as I can and have my family eat it until they're just like, you know what? I'm all set. I'm good. I got my broccoli fill. And then we can move on. Now, what I may do next year, I'm not sure how I wanna handle it. I'm leaning in two different directions. One thing I can do is exactly what I did this year and just be happy with what I got. The second thing I can do, which I'll probably do a half and half, is, well, so first of all, in the fall, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and plant just like I did. Figure out the timing for my fall planting, get it right, because it is a difficult crop. And then in the spring, what I'll probably do is I'll plant some 2 weeks earlier, and then another half of the bed 2 weeks later. And those first 2 weeks, I'm probably, so it may be next year where I'm planting around New Year's Day. I'll have to watch the weather very, very closely, but I may have to end up planting them around New Year's Day. And what that'll do is it'll give me a staggered harvest, because it's not like corn. Corn you have to basically plant all at once because it's super dependent on pollination. Broccoli isn't like that. Broccoli is building up to that point to where it desires the pollination, where it's got to create the flower. So we're harvesting it before it creates that flower. So that's where I'm going with this. We'll see how that works. It's going to be a judgment call all the way up until the day I plant, to be honest. But I'm thinking that's what I'm going to do. It could go either way. I could put it out too early and it'd get too cold, and I would just be fighting the weather, fighting the temperature so much that it would just be hindering me in the process in which we grow our broccoli. Didn't get a full harvest of broccoli this year, or you're starting to get some bolting, don't fret. You're going to get a second chance. That's the beauty of these plants, is every year you get a second chance. And then you can just change what you did next year. You can change what you did the next season and try and improve upon that. But I urge you to take a crop, for example. As a matter of fact, I'd like for you to comment on a crop that you really want to hone in on this year. What is one crop that you really want to figure out and you're going to put your efforts into, and really analyze how you did it last year and what didn't work, or whatever happened this spring, and what are you going to do different? So, each season we have different ones. We had broccoli this year. So now it's not high priority. We have an idea, so we can kind of flop a little bit. I'd like to, for instance, for the fall planting, I'd like to improve my cabbage harvest to where I get them earlier. I'd like to start getting cabbage in December instead of February and March. So I've got to figure that aspect out. This year for the summer, I want to figure out and do a little bit better for my corn. So those are my goals. But what are your goals? Because I think everybody should take a crop, figure it out, and then use the knowledge that you have from that crop and apply it to the next one. Even if it's completely different, you now know how to improve on it, because you know what crops will play better together and which ones won't.
Goodbye.